All right, so going into your leg lift, you can see like you're balancing up a little bit. So, you know, when your lower half gets a little bit stronger, more dynamic, you wanna lift and get going and be a little more aggressive out of your leg lifts. That'll help. That's gonna give you more momentum going forward. And then you can see, when I see the front leg down and ready to get out, if the back shin isn't linear, isn't moving down, so when I go to drive, it's gonna push my hip through. So if I'm coming out of leg lift and it's already getting out here, it's breaking my front hip, and this is still vertical, I'm just gonna turn it over. Because if I'm gonna really use the ground where there's a lot of energy, I've gotta ride my hips longer and get linear. And that goes back to you being more aggressive out of your leg lift. Coming out of your leg lift and being aggressive, kind of falling towards the target as you stay loaded and you start counter-rotating into your back hip and trunk. And then you can see right there, that's what happens. You get lift leg gets out front. This is not in position to drive, so you get really aggressive with your lift leg. And that's gonna cause everything to wanna fly open, which you can see pretty much happens. Because when you hit front foot, right there, you are somewhat separated. So if we look at the tools here, if we bust out the hip line, shoulder line, we can see there's some separation between the hip here and the trunk. So even though this is flying open, there's still some separation. But if this was delayed, if this was like staying more closed and waiting longer, and you were riding and loading this more, you could really separate those two. And the more we separate those lines, it's like taking a whip. And it's the difference between you barely throwing the whip back or you bringing the whip all the way back, right? Just like here, it's like if I barely bring the arm back as opposed to like bring the arm all the way back, right? I'm just gonna put more power up the chain. So, and then when you hit front foot, it quickly jumps ahead. So front foot's probably right there. And you can see it's still slightly separated, but it quickly, once you land, it quickly opens up. And your arms lays back early, so we call that early external rotation. We want to land, hips be open, shoulders be closed, and even late to cock the arm. We're kind of like doing this, right? So then once the hips are open, then this tucks and everything turns, and then it comes up and goes back. You hit, and you're already straight up, you hit, and you were quick to here, which starts to push your arm ahead, and your arm goes really early. So if we look how it finishes, you can see your arm turns over before your trunk even goes forward. So we saw your arm turn over and your trunk was still up. That's why we've got to delay all this, because the biggest predictor velocity is in this trunk. Meaning this trunk can create more velocity than your arm can create. And it's healthier velocity too, because your arm's not creating. So the goal is when we hit front foot, we're trying to carry that trunk all the way out here, right? You always hear that, get over your front side, right? And all that push and drive, if you delay against it, it's going to catapult everything forward. But if the arm is up and goes early, we cut all that off, right? So that's where hip to shoulder separation is so important. The more we can pull this apart, which means the more we can sit into this leg longer to hold that stability and pull it apart, then the later that arm wants to go, the more that trunk wants to push out as long as there's force.
Right here.
And then the arm goes. So I think
On the side.
there's not things that are,
You're gonna jump out.
there's not things that are too bad. I mean, maybe here, like you might be pulling too hard if we look.
Because one's behind the other.
And that typically happens when your hips aren't really driving.
After that.
But if we look at your chest position, at external rotation, it's about 22 degrees. That's not too bad. You actually want to go a little more than that, 25. So I wouldn't even say you're pulling too hard. It's just you're letting your arm get up and get going way too early. And see how like you're leaning and your arm's already released the ball? And you probably feel that when you really fall over here, right? And that's just trying to create more delay so your trunk can go farther before your arm releases. Right now, your trunk's just coming around and you're releasing the ball, so you're like, whoa, right? But if you separate it more and you let your trunk travel out, and then you release, everything would be right where you want it to go. Keep continuing to move.
So I can get to 7.
And if you look at your sequencing on it, you can And this is how you're timing all your movements.
610. Feel like you going
You
up
can
there,
see
John?
the lines are how
Going
every
out.
speed peaks. So it
Yeah.
has, the red line is when your hip speeds peak. And then the blue line, the dark blue line, is when your glove speed peaks. And then your green line is when your trunk speeds peak. The yellow line later on is when your arm speeds peak. And what we want is, we want that red line to be over here. Because we want this to go first. So we want that red line over here peaking.
Yeah.
And you can see it's peaking over here. Then we want the green and blue line to go together. We want this to drive and then these to go together, right? We don't want this to barely drive and this to try to make up and pull my arm around. That's what drags the arm. That's what causes the arm to go early. So you can see everything's clumping except, and the blue line's going first. So this is really your power generator. Whatever goes first is what's creating the sequence, and that's really a lot of where the power is. When the hips go first, that's important because you're engaged with the ground, and there's a lot of power here as opposed to here.
Yes, sir.
Makes sense, right? So what we need to do is get this red line to peak over here, and then the green line to follow that with the blue, and then the yellow line goes. So it goes red, blue, green. Make sense? And we're going to work on that in the camp. We're going to work on like using the King of the Hill plates and how to feel power through the hips and how to separate the shoulders from those movements. All those things are going to be huge to help you.
For you. So
Makes
when
sense?
he starts going, then you'll start going. So